Hello everyone, it's me Yunika. Today I'll show you my process of creating an original character. According to this month's prompt, I'm going to creating a combat character. I'll show you my process from the brainstorming stage to develop initial concepts as well as painting a full illustration for a character. Along the way, I'll show you some helpful tricks and tips using Clip Studio Paint to help speed up your process. Before we started, I just want to note that I'm not a native English speaker, so sometimes I mispronounce. You can always turn on the subtitles below. Alright, let's get started. So the first step I want to talk about is the brainstorming stage. Before you even starting to open the program and dive into drawing, which many of you would do, you have to think of the general idea of the characters that you want to do first. In this case, I wanted to creating a combat character, so there's 3 steps that I usually follow. First, you gotta know about the story or world that the character lives in. For concept art, the important thing is to know the setting of your character. You can ask yourself, when does the story take place? Where does it take place? The relation of the character with the story. It doesn't matter that you have to get a fully little details of your story. You don't have to do that. You just get a general idea so that you can start to think of the direction you wanted to go with your designs. So for example, my story is taking place in a futuristic settings in an alternate universe, and it's taking place in a war zone between 3 kingdoms. The robots and humans coexist with each other. It's just the little notes that you can drop down can really help shaping your story. It doesn't matter if your story is like unrealistic, fictional, or realistic or not. What I'm trying to get the idea here is you gotta get a general idea that you wanted to go with you along with your story. So the second step I wanted to talk about is the direction of your designs. What this means is that after you have a general idea of the world that your character lives in, you can start thinking about the designs. You can ask yourself these questions. What kind of costume does your character wear? Do you want it to be based on some culture? And if it is, then you have to do research on that culture to see whether the clothes is appropriate in some situation, what is not, what is okay to change, and what is not okay to change. For example, in my case, my story is in the future alternate universe, so I don't really base my costume on any culture, but it is still really helpful for me to explore different type of clothes that work in battle. So during this step, I would recommend using Pinterest, because Pinterest contains a lot of different images that you can use to help you gather reference for your idea and starting to putting the reference all in one board so you can refer to it later. Next, moving on to the third step, which is the character appearance. So in this step, you wanted to think about what do you want your character to look like, specifically about the shape, because in designs, the shape is an important element that can convey a lot of information about your character. For example, here, I'm gonna make it simple here. So if I'm drawing a circle like this, looks like a snowman, I know, but then what can you infer about this character just based on the shape that I just draw? So you can see that this person may be big, heavy, maybe they use heavy weapons and big clothes. Comparing to this type of character, like for example, if it is this thin, like I'm gonna draw a stick man here. So if this character is thin, then you would probably say that, oh, they may be more energetic and moving around a lot, making it easy going around, moving and doing a lot of actions. Alright, so this is the first stage, the brainstorming stage that I wanted to talk about. So during the exploring process, you can drop down notes about your character in the sketchbook or anything you can write on, so that way you can refer to it later during your designing process. Now, you already get a general idea of what you want your character to be and look like. Let's move on to the next steps. So in this stage, you can do it either in your sketchbook or straight digital. I prefer doing digital because I can edit things quickly. So when you kind of know File and Clip Studio Paint, for example, I go to File, and then New. I'm usually just choosing the A4 paper size. It doesn't matter if you choose landscape or portrait. You can just use arrows right over here to switch over landscape or portrait orientations, and then hit OK to creating a canvas for you to work on, but making sure that you're saving that canvas so that you're not losing your work. Alright, so the first step in the process is I recommend you starting with a big shape first. At this stage, what matters is the readability of your designs. Is it clear or not? It doesn't matter the little details, because sometimes people go into little details that are creating too many distractions for your overall designs. So right now, you can see that I already drew 5 different designs for my character, and then I also filled in with different shade to make it look good. You can see that the design is pretty simple. I'm not making a lot of focusing on fold and everything. I just want to look about the overall shape of my designs. So in this process, you wanted to get a reference board out. For example, you know how to get it out by using the subview window, right? Or in case you don't know, you can go to window and then animal subview here. I'm just turning it on and turn it on, and I'm using Windows and click subview, and then open the subview window, and you can just open the files, the reference board that you gathered. So right now I already have 5 different designs for my character. So the next step I wanted to do is creating a silhouette for my character. How can you do it is just creating a new layer above everything, and then using the lasso tools or the fill tools to fill in the silhouettes of your character. I already did this step here, so you can see it right now on my screen that I fill everything with black. So right now, after filling in the silhouettes of your designs, you will immediately recognize which designs is better than the others. So better designs means that it's not a clear silhouette. You can pretty much tell what's going on with the character from just looking at this thumbnail. Like how I pointed here, looking at the thumbnail here, I can say all my character have using spear, my character is using arrows, they have long hair, they're using double swords, all that kind of good stuff. So after going through all the designs, I finally decided to choosing the third one as the design for my final character. Right now, you can see on my screen that I have already making notes about her, like an overview about what she does and her role in the world, a story that I created. So for example, she's a high technology combat robot, capable of feeling and sensing pain, partially capable of understanding complex emotions, powered by rare Lumi crystal found in the deep ocean sea. So I also putting notes on my design, like she's half human, half robot, and using special spear and the feet with high-tech sensor. So some of you may want to skip the steps, but I personally found it helpful for me to making these little notes in here on handwriting that maybe only me can understand, but I can refer to it later when I want to make a story about her. Alright, so after you are finishing with this step, you probably wanted to creating a character reference sheet. So in here, I'm just lowering the opacity of my previous draft, and then I started to do line art and making a front view, back view, side profile view, the weapons that she used, and kind of reference to the nails there, her nails. So in this stage, you probably want to explore different colors for your characters. What color do you want your character to put on your character? Remember about the color theory and the specific emotion that is associated with the color. For example, if my character is a robot, then I would probably make her color more cyan, more blue. No, it's just my personal preference. You don't have to be like me, but I just want you to keep in mind that the emotion that the color associated with is really powerful and it can impact your character. So you may be wondering about the significance of doing a character reference sheet. For me, it is important that you draw the backside, the front side, and the side profile view of your character in different props, different colors so that when you're deciding to do an illustration about your character, you will immediately know what your character will look like from different angles. It's also a way to organizing ideas about your character, organizing concepts as well as colors, and starting to see if the overall color works for your character. Alright, so next step is the illustration part. So you probably wonder, why do you want to make an illustration? I wanted to make an illustration of my character because I think that it is a good idea to put your character in a drawing, in a setting, after you finishing the concepts and the designs to test how everything looks together. Sometimes the design looks great, but the setting of the story does not work well with the designs. So then, in that case, you'll have to redesign and come up with something else. So right now, I already prepared a sketch for my illustration in here. You can see that I have my main character here. And then the background, I wanted to go in pretty loose with the background right now because I'm not really focused on it right now. My main focal point is the character herself, so I just wanted to make her look more bold and more pop up on my page. So you can see that the background is kind of loose, but maybe you can infer that the background is kind of ruined because it's in a battlefield and she's standing on some sort of platform here. For the character post, if some of you are having a hard time visualizing anatomy, I recommend using Clip Studio Paint 3D models. So how can you doing this? You just go to Windows and then you go to the material right here and click on any of these one. I'll just click on material post. It will open the material panels right over here, and in the 3D section right here is drop down menu for the 3D section. You just click on the drop down menu and click on post. You can click and drag any post onto the canvas, drag it directly onto the canvas, and it will creating a post right here. You can using the different types of buttons, the top buttons and the bottom buttons to changing the view of your character. For example, I'm changing how big or small it is, changing the left to right, or just rotating my overall character right here. So I already have a post in my mind. I already sketched out. This is just a tips if you won't have a hard time with anatomy. So right now I already have a color in mind for this illustration, but I want to show you a really cool tips I discovered in Clip Studio Paint, which is a Colorize features. So what you can do is in your sketch layer right here, you select on this little icon which says as a reference layer, and then you go into Edit, Colorize Technology Preview, and then Colorize All. Now you're waiting for AI to initialize and colorize your entire painting. So right now, it's creating a layer on top of my sketch layer with multiplied blending mode. You can just drag it under your sketch layer right now. So you may not probably feeling good with this color, but what's good about AI is already shade your drawing. So right now you can see that it's fully shade with proper shadow, light. So if you wanted to change the color, you wanted to go to this little three stripe icon right here, and then new correction layer, or you can go to layer. Let's go to layer and then new correction layer, and then gradient map. In gradient map, what it does is that it's changing the color up from according to the color range. Like your image when fully shade, it will have a range from pure black to pure white and rescale. So what it does is that it takes in the color range and apply it to your image. So right here, for example, if I click on this, double click on this gradient map right here, then it will changing the overall color of my image. It's really helpful. So in case you're not really happy with this color, me too. So you can create a new layer on top of this layer, set the blending mode to color, and then using the soft airbrush, and then choosing the color you want, and then just brushing through the background. What the color mode does is that it does not alter the values of your image, it's just changing the color of that particular part. So a little note on composition. So right now you can see that my channel image is lacking something. I really feel like it's too many open space, like the sky here, the ground here. It does not have an anchor point for my illustration. So what I do is I creating a frame for my character. Like here, I'm painting this part more in darker values. It's like looking through a fence or a window or something really help frame my character. What I mean by framing is that you need to put a darker value foreground in order to make your character more pop out. You know, like framing your image or painting on a wall, it's just that same idea. You put a frame in your image so that it would more popping out. So right now you can see on my canvas that I already frame my artwork. So what it does is that in composition, your eyes usually travel around the image and then escape it at some point. So right now you can see that if you go into this direction right here, the arrow is pointing down and it will travel through this frame that I created. It's eventually hitting her step and then pointing to her, which help framing my character. And if you're looking at the painting, if it's going from her spear, and here it will travel down her hand or arms and then go directly to her face, which is what I was thinking about. You can also look at her left hand, like it's pointing straight into the ground, right? It's creating an anchor point for my work, as well as making the direction of the arrow travel directly to the face. So right now, I think that the flow of my artwork is pretty fair at this point. About the rule of thirds. So right now, if I turn on the grid, you can see that here her head is right exactly at this 1/3 point, and she's just occupy a 1/3 part of my canvas. So this is also a good idea to follow rule of thirds, which is the easiest rule in composition, so that you can have a good composition for your artwork. So right now, it is a really good idea for you to constantly checking your thumbnails, which is in the navigator windows right here. If you don't have the navigator windows, you can go to Windows and then Navigator. Make sure to place a check mark next to Navigator. And while you were painting, you pay attention to these little thumbnails. What if you can recognize your image from this little thumbnail, you can tell what's really going on in here, then you are successfully and going into the right path. If you are not able to tell what's going on, then you're probably adding too many distractions. So additionally, I also have another tips for you. So going to your work from the topmost layer, you wanted to go to layer and then creating another fill layer, which is except for layer menu, then go to new layer and pressing on fill. In here, you wanted to fill your layer with either pure white or pure black, but I usually go with pure white. And then pressing OK. Right now, your canvas is filling with white. Don't panic. This is the most important step. Go to your blending mode right here, and then change the blending mode to color. Now, you can see the value of your artwork. So in here, you can see that my background is lighter in value compared to my foreground, which is a really good direction already. So you can always turn on and off the visibility of your artwork like this while you're painting to constantly checking for the values. Remember, the values is the most important element while painting. Alright, so the next step I wanted to talk about is the rendering step. So usually people get lost during this step. So what I learned over time is that breaking your image down into simple shape really helps. So for example, in my image here, let me lower the visibility of this layer for you to better see it. I break my image down into this shape. You can see here, like I create for her head, I turn to a sphere, the neck is cylinder, then the body is like cubes. You breaking your character down into a simple shape like this can help you to understand where the light and shadow are going to form. For example, I'm going to get a brush right now. So if I'm going to get a main light source coming from the upper right corner of my canvas, then the part that will get a shadow will be this part, right? This part going to get a shadow, this part. As well, this part, utilizing your knowledge about shadow can help you determine where the shadow falls in this image. This is a really good exercise when I was at a beginner to try to break down real life photographs to understand where the light is going. This is just a simple breakdown, so you get a general idea of what's going on. Also, one important tip is that shadow is not pure black. You never just gonna drop a shadow black like this. No, do not shade your shadow with black. The shadow is inside the shadows, there's different reflection from the environment. So for example, if I have like a green, cyan, more purple color here, that is going to reflect directly into my shadow. Next is some tips that I wanted to talk about during your rendering stage when you're defining the light and shadow. This is my personal preference. I usually creating another layer on top and then using an overlay or soft light or hard light blending mode. Right now I'm using a hard light blending mode. And then next, I'm going to use an airbrush, which is a really soft brush, and then brushing on the part that I think the light will appear. This will help me to set a general direction where I want the light to go. And when you're doing shadow, adding another layer below your light layer, and then set the blending mode to multiply. So right now I can just pick this color and then brushing on the part that I think the shadow will appear. What multiply blending mode does is that it's darken the area of your character. By doing this, you can get a general idea of where the light and shadow hit, so that when you're starting to go into the little details, you're not really got lost in the process. Oh, and one important thing, if you're ever creating a folder like this I'm doing and then putting your layer inside a folder like this, then you can see right now when I'm putting in, the airbrush just show up, but it's not show the effect is changing. The reason for that is because the blending mode of your folder is set to normal. Make sure that the blending mode is setting to blue. So when you're setting the blending mode to blue, the effect, whenever you're using like a different blending mode layer, then the effect will show up through the folders. So here's another tip that I wanted to show you. Usually when I'm painting without line art, I usually use the Lasso Tool a lot. So what a Lasso Tool is right here in the subtool selection area. Is the Lasso Tool is located in here. So what it does is make a selection of whatever you wanted to select on your canvas. So right now my selection is the character that I already rendered. So you can add into the selection by holding down Shift and then click on other area to select, or holding down Alt to remove that selection. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to make the program to memorizing this selection so that later if I wanted to refer back to this selection, I can quickly select it without going through the trouble of selecting everything over again. So what I can do right now is going to select and then going to convert to selection layer. Right now you can see that the selection part has turned green. Don't worry, you can turn on and off the visibility of this layer. When you click on it, it will creating this layer, so you can always turn on and off the visibility of it. It won't affect anything. So what it does is that later when you're painting, you want to make the same selection again, you can just right click on this one and then click on the option selection from layer, and then create selection. See, the selection is reselect again. You don't have to go through the trouble of doing the selection over again. So here you can see that this is my in progress artwork. So there's some part that say pretty dull, it's not popping up. So what you can do in this step right now is creating another layer on top and then setting the blending mode to glow dodge. So what it does is that when you're using an airbrush, then soft airbrush like this, and picking a color and then brushing through that part, it will immediately brighten that part of your drawing. I personally find it helpful because it's helped me to brighten the part that I wanted. Remember to use an airbrush? You can change the brush density in here to high and low. I usually using like 10 or 20 during this process because I want a soft feelings. So now you can see that I can pick the color of my cave and then just brushing through it, brighten the part of my drawing. Remember, you shouldn't overuse this one because sometimes it's creating an overexposed image. But this is a helpful tool if you know how to use this correctly. Right now you can see that the face is also a little dark. So I'm creating another layer again and then setting the mode to overlay. So what overlay does is that it's increasing the saturation of your image. So right now I want her skin to have a little reddish. So I'm going to use brushing a little light reddish on her face. You see, right, immediately her face has color. So now before and after, right, before and after. Alright, so last and not least, don't forget to make color adjustment for your image. When you're not really happy about the over color, you can make some final editing by going to layer, new correction layer. Right now I want to change the color balance of my image. So I wanted to push my image to more cyan look and magenta look. So it's like it would help. You can see that the effect is taking place immediately. It's toning my image towards the magenta. So it is really helpful in changing the mood of your illustrations. So you can play around with different correction layer. Right now we have brightness, contrast, hue, saturation, luminosity, tone curve, all that kind of good stuff. Feel free to play around it. So after some adjustment, I come up with this image. You can see that this is the before and this is the after. What I did is that I using the color balance to toning my image toward a magenta look and making my hair a little brighter in this area to have the focal point popping out more. So you can see again, like this is the before and this is the after. You can see that there's more contrast, right? So here's some little final step that I wanted to add to my illustration. So you wanted to creating a new layer. So I'm going to talk about what I'm going to do here. I wanted to creating a grainy effect on my illustration. You can see what I mean by after doing this step. So I'm creating a new layer right here and then go to filter, render, and then Berlin noise. What it does is that you can see right now it's creating a noise on my canvas. So you can change the scale just 1. I usually go with 1, but you can go with any scale you feel comfortable with. 1 works best for me. 1 to 1.5, I usually go around that value. Now click OK. So now don't panic. Your illustration is not going anywhere. Go to the planning mode of that layer and set it to either soft light or overlay. So for example, if I set to overlay, you can see the grain, right? The little grain here. If I set to soft light, the effect is a little softer than overlay. I usually just go with soft light. And right now you can changing the opacity of your layer. So you can see that I'm going around 30. So this is like before, this is after. It's just my personal preference to make it a little noise and grainy. You don't have to do this step, but I just feel like it makes my illustration pop out more. Alright, I think that's it for today. Thank you for tagging along with my process of creating a character from start to finished. I hope that my little tutorial can help you learn something new. And I hope that my little tips along the way can really help you learn with your process of creating a new character. Thank you again for watching until the end of the video. Down below in the description of the video, you can also see a link that leads to the tips article. In the bottom, like all the way to the end of my tips article, I put a link of all my brushes and Clip Studio Paint assets that I use for this process. You're welcome to check it out. If you like the content of my video, please leave a comment or like my video so that I have motivation to creating videos like this next time. Thank you, and until next time, have a good day.